This is Russell M. Webb, attorney in Houston, with maybe it's a test, maybe it's a show, who knows. It's the second published version of a little show that I'm doing right now about the legal system, the criminal justice system, to be specific. And we were talking previously about my pre-arrest advice. And I suppose what I want to tell my audience are stories about how the police, A, get in your car, B, get the goods on you, C, trick you into making statements you otherwise would not make. Now, I'm sitting here with no notes, so I hope I can remember A, B, C that I told you about, but if I forget, well, that's why. I don't have a set of notes here. We talked about pre-arrest advice, and my first rule is don't do it. We talked about license plate readers and other electronic surveillance tools that the police have and use daily to scan license plates and look into the background of that license plate, including are there any warrants connected to that plate, or whether your insurance is registered with the state. But I've already talked about that, and I'm sorry it ended abruptly last time, but I hope to not do that this time. I've got to keep an eye on the camera because it sometimes goes off. I'm using my phone here. So anyway, A, how do police get into your car? Well, rule number 1A of don't do it is, for you puffers and huffers that like to smoke the magic drag in, don't do it in your car, because the most common police report item on how the police managed to search somebody's car without a warrant was, I smelled marijuana. A, burning marijuana, if you're smoking in the car, or 2, fresh marijuana packaged only in a baggie, because the smell of fresh marijuana permeates a baggie like a BB through a chain link fence. So if you're going to transport, I'm not advising you to break any laws because it's legal someplace. However, if you happen to have something like that, it should be inside of something that does not allow the smell to come out, because by law, police officer writes on his report, I smell the odor of marijuana, gives him the right, probable cause to search the car. Don't do it. Now, what was B? I don't remember. Talking to the police. My advice, and I'm fairly sure most criminal lawyer practitioners would advise you to avoid having a conversation with the police, making a statement. I've had many clients call me up and say, the police want me to come down and talk about this or that or whatever. And my advice universally is, don't do it. The reason is, anything you say will be used against you. Will be. The police will ask you questions, the answers of which, taken out of context, might tend to incriminate you. Even though they read you your rights, you might have an urge to want to tell your story. Don't do it. Whatever you say, especially after they've read you your rights on tape, which is a requirement of admitting your statement into evidence, you've said some things. Just one little thing can open a crack, even if you're innocent, for the police to go and dig up more evidence. And that brings me to another topic. The police are allowed by law, by case law, to lie to you, to trick you into giving up a confession. It's okay. I'll make sure you get home safely tonight. It's okay. I'll take care of you. Don't do it. Everything you say can be used against you. Now, what other topic should I talk about? My advice is don't talk to the police any more than you have to. A recent case came out that suggested that a person must invoke their own right to remain silent, even if the rights haven't been read. And if your rights haven't been read to you and you're having a conversation with the police, a little hackle should go off in the back of your neck. Your hair should stand up when the police start asking you questions. And the polite response of, I'm invoking my rights, should be made by you. You don't need a lawyer to do that. Every person on this planet above 7 years of age has seen the Miranda warnings given on television in one form or another, but it always starts out with, you have the right to remain silent. If you have the right to remain silent, they're not going to remind you that you have the right to remain silent. They being the inquisitor police. My advice is, give only the required advice. You have to identify yourself. If they reasonably ask you for ID, you have to identify yourself. That's about it. Give them your address. When they start asking you about things like, what are you doing? Where are you going? Where are you coming from? It's really not required for you to tell them that. I can remember back in my motorcycle riding days being stopped at one of those checkpoints. I produced my license and insurance, and he kept asking me questions, and I kept politely zipping it. So, those are things that you should know, and if you follow that advice, remember Rule 1, it'll be more difficult for the police to get the goods on you. Now, letting the police in your home. You don't have to, and my advice is, unless they have a warrant to enter your home, that you do not allow the police to come into your home. If the police show up at your door, my advice is to keep the door closed and locked and speak to them through the door. Unless they have a warrant, or unless there are certain exceptions to their obligation to get a warrant, such as there's a heated battle between you and someone else going on inside your house and they can see it from the outside. Or, for example, they're chasing you and you run into your house. Guess what? They can chase you into your house. Those are things that the courts have called exigent circumstances. But unless those exigent circumstances exist, my advice is, do not let the police inside of your home, because it opens up more worms inside of a can that you just opened. Because the minute they walk in your house, they observe, they scan the room in about 2 seconds, and the joint in the ashtray suddenly becomes illegal, and they can arrest you because you let them into your home. It was not an illegal entry into your home. So a lawyer would have a difficult time getting that evidence suppressed in the future. Make the police violate your rights in order to obtain whatever evidence they might obtain. Don't hand it to them. Don't confess anything. That was another item that I had on my list, was no confessions. Don't talk to the police beyond what you're required to give them. And certainly don't confess anything. And certainly don't try to explain things, because guess what? You're just digging a deeper hole. You talk to the police, even if you're completely innocent of whatever it is they're questioning you about, you can say something that incriminates you. That's not related, and the only way you'll get to explain it is in a courtroom in front of a jury. But the biggest thing that gets people in trouble, in my limited experience, well, my 30 years of experience in Texas, is smoking weed in the car, having a baggie full of weed in the car that's in a baggie instead of inside of 3 or 4 layers of sealed containers, like a mason jar, and inside the mason jar, inside of a super thick Mylar kind of bag. Other than that, that's the biggest, one of the biggest reasons that cops get into cars. There's a fiction created by the United States Supreme Court that says if the police arrest you and they have a right to tow your car, and there exists within their department a policy on inventorying vehicles, if you are arrested for anything and the police have a right to tow your car, they can perform, according to the Supreme Court, Florida versus Wells is the name of the case, I think, and search it, and they write down in their report, upon inventory search of said vehicle, officers found contraband. Gun, weed, drugs, nasty magazines with children in them, something like that. In any case, that's just a little thing I thought I would tell you. If you're arrested for any reason and the police have a right to tow your car, they have a right to perform an inventory search. The word search was used. Now, in order for an inventory search to be valid, the particular agency must have a written policy on inventory searches. And that pretty much covers everything, including, in the last drug case I tried, digging around and inventorying a pack of cigarettes to find a tiny little baggie about the size of a sugar, sweet and low packet. Empty, but there are 2 grains of something white that's probably cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine, etc. So, that's a little something you should know. For now, that's the end of this segment of the show. I hope it doesn't look too bad, and so I get to publish it. Otherwise, this is Russell M. Webb, attorney. There's the phone number. 713-225-5932, and that spells area code 713. Call Webb with 1 B. You can't dial the last B on a mobile device. You can dial WEBB from a landline, but not a mobile device. Thank you. And okie dokie, that's the end. Let's go see what we got. Whoa.